Welcome to episode 177 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the repeatability edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. We definitely don't repeat what we say on week-to-week basis, but there definitely are repeat winners coming through the world of motorsports this past weekend. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and I'm with my co-host who's on the road this week, the owner of a liquid-colored Dale Earnhardt Jr. diecast Sundrop car, a computer genius, a gentleman, a scholar, an iRacing Indy 500 champion, and one of Jacksonville Jaguars' biggest fans. His name is Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
Doing great, Phil. Of course, the liquid color diecast Dale Jr. Sundrop car from last year. I appreciate the gift there, man. It was a really, really nice gesture of you, and I really, really like the color of it. I've never actually owned a liquid color car in the past, so this is actually my first one of the diecast that I have, but I really like it. And will pair well with the cans of Sundrop that I've got in the fridge back home. So look forward to being able to stage a little picture there or something like that, along with the North Wilkesboro Sundrop shirt that I've got. So we'll figure something out there. But yeah, doing great. And of course, we had a ton of repeat winners this past weekend, both in NASCAR and F1. So yeah, ready to get into it.
Yeah, so we're going to get into F1. We're actually not, I don't think we're going to meet the 7.5 minute guideline. We might go a little bit over at this week because of breaking news that took place earlier today. We're doing this on a Tuesday, the 11th of July. So Daniel Ricciardo was brought in to AlphaTauri now to take over for Nyck De Vries after 10 rounds of the Formula One World Championship. So I definitely have a take on that. We'll get into Fish Lips winning yet again, but really the race was behind him and it was quite an interesting race. And we'll get into all that. Lando Norris, arguably the best race weekend he's ever had. I mean, granted, he had the Russia weekend where he probably should have won his first race, but I think this is probably one of the best weekends he's ever had. We'll get into all that, all the points. We'll talk about all the events in NASCAR. William Byron takes the series leading fourth win of 23 with his second win at Atlanta since the reconfiguration. Rain shortened race. Of course, when it's a Hendrick car, you know that they'll always call it when a Hendrick car is leading. John Hunter Nemechek ended up being the beneficiary when Justin Haley, Ross Chastained Daniel Hemric late in the race, not by wrecking him, but getting out of line and running side by side because with his pathetic excuse that he said he was running out of fuel. We'll get into that. And then Corey Heim, while basically every other person on the racetrack was either running into someone or running into the grass or dirt or sand and looking like monkeys effing footballs. That was on the after the day before when Sean Higurani went and ran over Dean Thompson in the ARCA race like a jackass, and thankfully got suspended for it because he's a moron. And and a tool, and he does that. It's a common theme because he wrecked somebody in a super at I think Milwaukee a few weeks ago. So it's a common theme. So maybe somebody just has to run him over, maybe, and then after that somebody just has to beat his ass. But we'll get into all the NASCAR stuff. IMSA was at Mosport. We'll get into the results there for Roundup. F2 and F3 at Silverstone, Supercars at Townsville, Extreme Island X-Prix, the World Endurance Championship, and F1 Academy was at Monza. We'll preview the Superstar Racing Experience, which starting this Thursday will be on Thursday nights. Thursday Night Thunder, the return. I'm hoping and praying they got Dave Despain to go and do the Open like they used to have. It was so classic. Probably didn't, but we'll see about that. Formula E is in Rome, so that's a big. They're getting close to the end of their season. Only got a couple rounds to go here, so the championship's very tight. World Superbikes at Imola, where the title's definitely not tight. We'll get through all that. We'll preview the IndyCars at Toronto this weekend. Make our picks. Already, Simon Pagenaud's has not passed concussion protocols. So Tom Blomqvist, the Meyershank Racing Acura prototype driver, defending series champion, is gonna be he's gonna be in the 60 car this coming weekend, amongst other things. And of course, silly season's starting to roll. We'll talk about Ross Chastain too in Cup, because now he's going to be driving the Busch Light Chevy, so that'll be interesting. While Stewart Haas basically has no sponsors, so that's always great. But then when you run as bad as they do, how the hell do you have sponsors? And speaking of Stewart Haas and Cup, XFinity will be at New Hampshire. We'll make our previews and picks. Josh will talk about all things sim and gaming in his sim segment. We'll call it a day. So let's start with the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. One of the classics, of course, one of the ones everybody wants to win. And it's a rare race that Fish Lips hasn't won until this past weekend. And he had to battle for it. He had a battle to qualify on pole. Lando Norris almost got him on that. The McLarens were really fast this past weekend. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri started second and third. You had the Ferraris behind them, then the Mercedes. Alexander Albon for Williams qualified in the top 10. Fernando Alonso, Gasly. Logan Sargent made his second Q2 appearance of the year. And then Sergio Perez actually didn't even make it out of Q1 because of issues for Kevin Magnussen. That adds to the repeatability bit that we got going on today. With whatever power unit or driveline issues that he had. So that was the qualifying. And then in the race, I mean, Fish Lips drove away after Lando Norris actually had made a good start and was leading for the first, I think, 5 laps of the race, or 4.5, or however. So he actually was racing pretty well, and he was battling his best friend or whatever. The fact that Max Verstappen has friends surprises me, but Fish Lips ended up passing him and basically running away. And then Kevin Magnussen had another breakdown. This time it was on the Wellington straight and qualifying. I have to go and bring up so during qualifying he had issues and broke down just past Stowe and was going up Vale to go head into the club corner into the chicane over there. He had an issue. Then during the race, he broke down on the Wellington straight. They had to call a virtual safety car and then eventually a full safety car that took forever. In that process, Oscar Piastri had pitted already and got screwed by that. Would have been his first podium of his career, but he didn't look like a rookie this past weekend. The results of the British Grand Prix: Fish Lips, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, his 14th podium finish in 16 races at Silverstone. So for all those people that don't like him, you can take that and suck it. He's won there 8 times or 7 times. They didn't even know which one it was. Some say 7, some say 8. I don't know. How the hell do you F that up? He hasn't won there in a couple of years, so the stats show it. Piastri, Russell, Checo Perez from 15th after a penalty for Valtteri Bottas. Yeah. I mean, I'm good here, but I think So, we had Alonso, Albon, Leclerc, and Sainz after an absolute cluster by Ferrari with their strategy, per usual. And Logan Sargent was the first one out of the points in 11th after a penalty to Lance Stroll because he hit everything but the lottery, even though he hit the genetic lottery and the fact that he's going to be able to have billions and billions of dollars once his dad eats it. But the fact is he still can't drive. But yeah, I think the big story or takeaway is what McLaren has done. At the start of the year, they were completely out to lunch. And in a span of 10 rounds, 4 months, they have remade their car to a point where they're competing with Red Bull to a point. They're up there with Mercedes, Ferrari, Aston, and now they actually are a factor. And Lando Norris is has a lot of confidence, and things are on the upswing for McLaren. in Formula One, which has been a issue for many years for them. And I think he put together the best race weekend of his career, sans, of course, the Russian Grand Prix a couple of years back. But his performance and McLaren's performance, I think, stood out as much as anything to me, Josh. Lewis benefited from the VSC and the safety car, but he's one of the best. He tried to get at Lando, burned his tires off, almost lost third in the process. Basically outran George the whole weekend. Even though George did beat him in qualifying, he was faster than him on race pace and had proved it. Albon with another great performance, moving Williams further up in the constructors. That's really it. Alpines, both Alpines fell out of the race, which is, I guess, par for the course. And that ended up helping out in the process for Mercedes and for some of these other teams that probably, with the Alpines both functioning, I think there's a possibility Ferrari might have been out of the points there. But what did you think of the race on Sunday, Josh? It was crazy behind fish lips, and for once it was actually entertaining, but I guess that kind of always seems to happen at Silverstone.
Yeah, Silverstone definitely has the entertaining races, and we've obviously seen it in the past. 2020, Lewis coming to the finish with a flat tire, and 2021, of course, controversy with Max and Lewis there with the wreck that they had. Of course, last year, Max never in contention and led to Carlos Sainz's first win, but this one finally Max finally gets a win at the British Grand Prix. But behind all of that, it's definitely entertaining, and I think something needs to be said about McLaren. Of course, like you said, they put in a lot of effort recently to upgrade their program. They definitely have done a lot of upgrades over the last few years, but we just haven't really seen any of the results, to be honest, with what they've done over the past few seasons. Of course, the season that they had with Daniel Ricciardo winning at Monza, they were never really true contenders there. They had a handful of good races, but they never really turned anything from that year into more success beyond that win. But now it seems like maybe they have something for real finally, and the fact that they were able to hold the lead for at least a couple of laps there at the beginning of the race before, of course, DRS took over and Max was able to get out in front. They actually led a handful of laps, so at least Red Bull didn't dominate the entire event, even though it was just the first handful of laps there in the race. So definitely a interesting aspect there, and credit to McLaren for finally maybe looking like they're for real and maybe better than a midfield contender. Finally, maybe they can break out of that group that they've been in for the last couple of years, and definitely maybe towards the bottom, especially last year. I think they were probably towards the bottom of that tier in the midfield, and now maybe they're starting to break out into that upper echelon. But last year they were not really that great. Now the last couple of races they had some pretty good finishes with Lando and Oscar Piastri. So definitely a surprising result there for them. And I think it's a good thing that it happened at their home race in the British Grand Prix. And interesting that the outside of Red Bull and Verstappen, the rest of the top five all Mercedes powers. So even though they aren't quite there up there, maybe in terms of pace with Verstappen and Red Bull, definitely a very encouraging result for Red Bull or Mercedes and McLaren. So there's definitely a positivity in that aspect, of course. But on the other hand, Verstappen continuing to dominate the series and definitely continuing to dominate, and Red Bull now getting their 11th straight win, so tying McLaren for the longest streak of wins in F1 so far. So another tie into McLaren there, but Verstappen continuing to dominate, and at least he had a little bit of a challenge in this race. So definitely a lot of interesting things that happened. Of course, some of the other guys in this race, like Logan Sargent, almost came close to getting his first points finish and finishing in 11th. So just missing that and disappointing there. But I think Williams also beginning to show a little bit more pace. They were shocking, of course, in the practice sections, having quick laps there. So very shocking. And of course, Albon finishing in 8th also. So Williams also turning around. So another British-based team having a fairly good result for themselves during the British Grand Prix, and Ferrari also having decent result, but not great. So yeah, some interesting results there. But yeah, I mean, the British Grand Prix seems to kind of be the beginning of the climax, I guess, in the F1 season. And even though in the midst of the domination of Max Verstappen, at least we got to see a little bit of change of scenery up front for sure.
And add that Williams was celebrating their 800th Grand Prix. I mean, officially it was 799. It'll be 800 at Hungary in a couple weeks, but they celebrating that milestone at Silverstone and having one of their best weekends they've had in a while is a big deal for them as well. And bringing up the Mercedes power unit, it's interesting how the customers are seemingly making more progress than the factory team. I wonder what's going on with that. Seems like Toto spends more time in talking in the media and coming up with excuses and this and that and the other, instead of making heads roll for the fact that they can't make a good car because they haven't made a good car since 2019, essentially. So is what it is, though. We'll get into the points. And I mean, we know for Fishlips is going to win another championship, so that's whatever. 99 points up on Checo Perez. Guy can't even get out of Q1. That helps. So almost 4 race wins ahead. He's not going to lock up the championship at Hungary like Nigel Mansell did in 1992, but there's a pretty good chance that he'll have it locked up in October at the rate he's going. Alonso third. What is it? 19 points behind Checo, and then Lewis Hamilton is 35 points out of second and 16 points out of third. Carlos Sainz, George Russell are separated by a point. Charles Leclerc is 9 points behind Carlos Sainz, so that's a good battle to look at for 5th in the Drivers' Championship, 2nd in the Drivers' Championship. Then you have Stroll and Norris, who I think Norris is going to end up overtaking him in pretty soon. If Oscar Piastri can start continue to do some solid runs, I think he's going to get in the top 10. Alpine and their lack of reliability now hitting Esteban Ocon. It's been hitting Pierre Gasly. Alex Albon at 11 points. And Logan Sargent will not finish last in the World Drivers' Championship because he's had better finishes than Nyck De Vries, and he's still on the grid. So that's the drivers. And the teams, what is it? They've got over a 200. They have a 208 point lead, right? Yeah. So 200 or 205. Yeah. My math, of course, it's this late in the day. I can't do math or something. 208. There you go. I was right. Sorry. On Mercedes has a 22 point lead on Aston Martin. Ferrari is 24 points behind Aston Martin for third there. McLaren has a 12 point lead on Alpine. Williams is tied with Haas for 7th, but they have the better finish, the best results, so they're ahead of Haas. Alfa Romeo is 9 points, and AlphaTauri rounding out the rear with 2 points. And that leads into the breaking news of today when we actually are doing the show. There's they've been squeezing. It's been tightening on. Things have been getting worse and worse for Nyck De Vries. One-Eyed Marco's been basically burying him at any chance he could get. Even one of his so-called best friends, Max Verstappen, couldn't even save him. One-Eyed Marco basically threw Nyck De Vries under the bus and let him go. didn't bother to, give a proper, like have a respectful send off. He just dumped him out like he's dumped so many other drivers. But Daniel Ricciardo had a tire test at Silverstone, and they were waxing poetic about how fast he was. And I guess, they made a determination based on one Grand Prix that they were going to hire Nyck De Vries. So now their new determination is, okay, after one tire test, let's just go and hire somebody. Let's just go and put him in the car. That's Red Bull for you. But what did you think, Josh, when you heard the news? I have my rant, but I'll give you the floor first in terms of Daniel Ricciardo making a return after what we thought was probably the end of his Formula One career, driving, basically being a back marker at McLaren.
Yeah, you talk about the Ricciardo's kind of up and downs throughout his career since he left Red Bull back at the end of 2018, and he had his 2 years at Renault that went okay, and then he decided to take on a opportunity to go to McLaren, and like I mentioned earlier, it ended up taking the win at Monza, drove Dale Earnhardt's number 3, but other than that, ended up being a true struggle and never really seemed to be like his self that he was at Red Bull during his top of his career there. That where he made so many great overtakes over the years, and a lot of moments that led him to be one of the more popular drivers in the series. So the fact that now he's rehired back into an AlphaTauri, personally, I'm a Ricciardo fan, so I'm happy to see that he's back in the series, and that he has a chance at, maybe not a victory, of course, but certainly if this tire test is truly indicative of his talent and what he's able to do in this type of car, then maybe certainly could see some very interesting moments from him throughout the rest of the year, and it'll be up to him to be able to keep the ride and be able to prove that the tire test is not a fluke, and that he definitely has something still left in the tank here in Formula One. So a lot of people, my thought maybe even the drive with as a test driver role, that not really going to be able to have a chance anymore. It's going to be tough to get back into a top ride. And yeah, AlphaTauri is not really a top ride, although one might argue that Yuki Tsunoda has had a few moments here and there of being able to get the most out of that car, even though I think by all accounts probably one of the more worst cars on the grid. So there's an opportunity for Ricciardo. I think definitely Ricciardo has a chance to be competitive in this car, so we'll see if he can get the job done, and if he's able to keep the ride at the end of the year beyond. So, there's always the chance to, as a reserve driver, that you get back in, but then there's always the chance that you never get back into it, and of course maybe people thought that Ricciardo had a better chance if he decided to go to NASCAR and do a one-off there. There's been plenty of opportunities over this year, what we've seen for him to do that, and other series where he could have done a one-off or something to stay relevant and stay fresh, but he managed to stay the course and has landed the opportunity now to get a ride. But on the other end, Nyck De Vries, of course, we saw what he was able to do in his reserve role, where he went out and performed well and got in the points in his one race last year, and that led to this opportunity this year to be able to run well at AlphaTauri. And you also mentioned that he hasn't really ran that great, but maybe it's not his fault necessarily, and maybe just hasn't been given good enough cars from Red Bull, from AlphaTauri. So unfortunate there, and we'll have to see if he's able to get a new opportunity somewhere else, or does he go back to Formula E where he was before, or another series where maybe he can show his talent, or perhaps maybe team here in IndyCar over in the States decides to pick him up and give him an opportunity where he can be more competitive in a car that maybe similar to like what Romain Grosjean did a couple of years ago, something similar where he went and did a prove-it deal on a kind of a lower team, but still managed to be competitive at several racetracks. So there's always that opportunity if IndyCar owners out there are listening, or are maybe on the watch for a driver of that talent. So we'll have to see. But it's an interesting development, and one end, great for a popular driver to be back in the series, but on the other hand, somebody who's definitely a rising talent getting the short end of the stick there.
Yeah, I mean, 10 races is not, enough of a sample size to determine if a guy can drive or not, really. But it is Red Bull's MO to go and do this. I mean, you could just see the absolute like laundry list of drivers that they've ran in and out of Formula One just on the Red Bull team itself. You know what I mean? It's just crazy how many people they've had. I mean, they had an American deal going for initially years and years ago, and it's just crazy the people they have. I mean, now I'm counting, like I'm trying to look up how many people they have right now under their deal. You have, what is it, 6 drivers in Formula 2, 1 in Super Formula, Liam Lawson. So that's 7. Formula 3, Sebastian Montoya. So 2 sons of racing drivers or whatever, famous racing drivers. You have 1 American in Jack Crawford, some guy I've never even heard of there. Arvid Lindblad, I think he was doing some sim racing during the pandemic. So 12 drivers as of now. We look at that, and then like right now they have 2 guys amongst that group that have won hardware. Dennis Hauger is the defending Formula 3 champion, and then Lindblad. But then you go and look back in the history of Red Bull drivers, Christian Klein, who did run for Jaguar and Red Bull once they became Red Bull, and then ran out of town. Vitantonio Liuzzi, who was with not AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso. He was with Red Bull and Toro Rosso, and then got canned at the same time as Scott Speed. Kvyat was rehired, fired or demoted, rehired, and now he's going to be driving for Lamborghini and sports cars. Alexander Albon is more recent. They rushed him up after I don't know how many races on Gasly. He ends up flaming out at Red Bull, and now he's at Williams after taking a year off to do DTM. Then you have Pierre Gasly as well, who now, of course, is out in Alpine. They're forgetting Carlos Sainz, or no, graduates of Toro Rosso. Okay, so these are the people that actually went to Red Bull. All right, and then the people this list is very interesting too. Scott Speed, as I mentioned, Sebastian Buemi, who's won Formula E championships, Jaime Alguersuari, who just disappeared off the face of the planet, Brendan Hartley, who's a sports car champion, multi-sports car champion, Le Mans winner, Jean-Eric Vergne, who's a Formula E champion, Carlos Sainz, who of course landed on his feet with 2 other teams and now is settled at Ferrari, and Yuki Tsunoda, who's actually now in his 3rd year with that team, which is basically the longest some of these guys have gotten. I mean, it's like a cesspool. I can't stand Red Bull just based on their arrogance, especially. I mean, they're poor losers and they're even worse winners. And you have Marco with his typical bullshit comments, saying shit about all these drivers, and I'm not saying you have to baby them, but it's like, dude, your track record of running people in and out of town is not very. You run most of these people out of town. They end up generally, in a lot of cases, have been all right, but that's after you ran them over, like they're shit. And it's like, they really aren't that bad. It's just that you provide them terrible race cars once they get to Formula One. Or you just focus on one car and then you make 3 shitty ones. That's literally what Red Bull is. They make a shitty second car and bury that driver. AlphaTauri is a dumping ground. What the hell are you trying to do? I've been on record, or I'm going on record here because it's our show. AlphaTauri is going to have 2 new drivers next year amongst that whatever list that they had of the active drivers in their development program. And they said this on motorsport.com. One of their columnists was saying what the logic for the move. And the logic for the move, they said, paraphrasing, is essentially pressure on Sergio Perez, because if he doesn't turn it around, they have a ready-made guy who's a winning F1 driver, albeit, not once recently, but it has been a long time. And he's a Red Bull he's a Red Bull, the guy came through all this crap, and then he can go and be the cuckold to fish lips. And because he'll be able to go and sit there and maybe qualify in Q3 and get some points. I mean, that's literally where we're going. And to me, that's not a healthy method of running a motorsport program. But then One-Eyed Marco's been doing this shit for decades and raced in Formula One, and he thinks he knows everything. He thinks he's God, and that's part of the problem. That arrogance goes down to Karen Horner, who is a trust fund baby who raced and then decided to quit and got in with Matisic, and somehow or another was able to fuck a Spice Girl, and now he's married to her. And then you have your two greatest finds. One of them was a BMW junior driver, Sebastian Vettel, and then the other one is Fish Lips, because they signed him. Essentially, they signed him for 15 because it worked out in the sense that Mercedes was going to get him, and I think he had other offers, but Mercedes wanted to make him actually have him run through junior categories. Red Bull basically said, okay, no, you've already ran whatever, what is this? Formula 3 European Championship, and that's good enough for us, and we'll go and put you in a Toro Rosso. He ran one full season and like 5 races, and then got into Red Bull, and the rest is history. But to me, it's like, you've never really, how many, other than Daniel Ricciardo, how many of these guys have they cultivated, and have they been really successful with Red Bull? Pierre Gasly won 1 race, and now he's gone. Carlos Sainz really wasn't like all that amazing. He did all right at Toro Rosso, but once he left, he's done way better. You look at this list of drivers, a lot of them, after leaving the cesspool of a program, have done well for themselves, but it's in spite of the fact of how Marco and some of these other pieces of crap that run that organization talk about him. I mean, they buried Scott Speed. They're part of the problem. They were part of the reason why there's only been 2 Americans on the grid since 2007. They had this American development program, which ironically, a lot of those drivers, I'll go down that rabbit hole here in a second. I mean, of course, Scott Speed, but then you talk about, I mean, the graduate summary, this is a crazy amount of drivers that have made it to F1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
Rossi
10, 11,
that,
12, 13, 14. I don't think so. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 drivers from the Red Bull junior program have made it to F1. And then another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's 30 drivers have had some experience. A total of 30 drivers have driven an F1 car or had some connection in World Series by Renault or something. Like, they've been in a top, junior feeder series. One of those, of course, being Robbie Wickens. Colin Fleming, American driver. Neil Yanni, who's testing for Sauber and Audi in their process to become a full power unit manufacturer. Philippe Albuquerque, who races here in IMSA. Michaela Lotion, IndyCar driver. Antonio Felix da Costa, former Formula E champion. Alex Lynn, who's in Formula E, I think. And then Dick Tantrum, who's in Formula E. It was searching for they didn't bother to list all the people there. They had the American spinoff, and then he didn't list all the people that were in there. I think there was, but whatever the Red Bull, that I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but they had a list of those American drivers, and they really were, a lot of them guys have ended up being really well off in the sense that they were able to make careers for themselves, even in spite of Red Bull, thankfully. They've cultivated talent, sure. How many of them have actually done anything in a Red Bull car? 1. That's in 20, what is this? We're talking about 20 years they've been around. 25 if you count the fact that One-Eyed Marco has run this program since 99. So yeah, so essentially 25 years. 25 years of Red Bull in some way, shape, or form running a driver development program. Numerous drivers that generally have had successful careers. The vast majority of them not in a Red Bull car, and only one of them, Daniel Ricciardo, actually winning in a Red Bull car. The two most famous guys that Red Bull purports, neither of them were actually Red Bull development drivers. They might have had a sponsorship with them, but they weren't development drivers.
Nope.
So I know people say you hate Red Bull, so you're just going to go and rag on them. You hate Max Verstappen and all this stuff. Yeah, I don't care for Max Verstappen. I never will. I don't care what he does. He's a fish lip prick, and he drives like an asshole when he's around Lewis Hamilton. But somehow or another, everybody else moves around and lets him go by, so all of a sudden he can drive a race. He can drive a race car, but he's a cocksucker, and he's a horrible person. And his dad's a prick. His future father-in-law is a horrible person. Karen Horner's a piece of shit, and so is One-Eyed Marco. So the point is, he's basically coddled to be the most horrible person in the world. And he does it. And now he has the best car, and he can dominate without even having to try. Like, literally, he could go and you could put... but to be fair with Adrian Newey, I think you could give him a toilet, put wheels on it, and I think he could make that car win too. Well, that's essentially what the AlphaTauri is, right? We'll see what old Danny Rick has in store. It'll be a lot more entertaining, press conferences and crap like that. But the notion that he's going to bring them back up and get up to like Williams and all that, I have a hard time believing that. But it also is a thing where it's kind of a squeeze on both Yuki Tsunoda and Sergio Perez, which, that if I'm Liam Lawson or I'm Iwasa or some of these people that might be in line for that, I'm like, I'm trying to go and start hedging, because I would be trying to hedge my way out the effing door. It's like if I'm Seb Montoya, my dad drove for Cheap Ganassi and Roger Penske, I'd be like, hey Dad, can you go and call one of them teams and see if they have stuff going on? Or maybe talk to Andretti, since he wants to run a Formula One program maybe, and he has Indy cars and likely has at least one opening and might have more, 2 openings next year. I don't know. All right, that went longer than I thought it would, but it's probably because I can't stand Red Bull. And so we'll get back to the 7.5 minutes of Formula One coverage next week. But I had to say that and do that. It just really pissed me off. Okay. Will Byron wins again. Whoop-de-freaking-do. It was convenient how he won that because of the not looking to sell charter. Yeah, they should be, because they suck. I know they're going to keep the 7. That's fine. But they should, for the greater good of the sport, get rid of the second car, because they're god-awful. And join another team or something, get in with Trackhouse or some shit. They're a marketing firm. They're not a racing team. And granted, I can't say that as much this year, because they're outrunning one RCR car. They're outrunning 3 SHR cars and some of these other guys that are with the big time teams. So guess they're turning it around. But how many years are you going to give it until Corey LaJoie makes good? Until he turns 40? Whatever, and he'll always be a favorite at these drafting tracks. Quaker State 400 at Atlanta, light under lights, night race. They only got 185 of the scheduled 260 laps completed. The results: William Byron, Daniel Suarez in the Quaker State Chevy, AJ Allmendinger, Michael McDowell, Kyle Busch, the top 5, Brad Keselowski, the winner of stage 2 in the race, JJ Yaley's first top 10 in God knows how long. I forget. They had the thing up there, and I'm like, that 15 car is running up front, and the 14 car is running tailback. That tells you all you need to know about how bad Stewart Haas cars are. JJ Yaley has been and never will be in a stock car, and he'll drive any rent-a-wreck you tell him to drive. You pay me, I'll drive a rent-a-wreck. It's fine. The thing I don't know if he drove for that piece of crap G2G guy, but it's entirely possible. He's driven for all the slime that's been in NASCAR. I think every slimy, grimy person. And Rick Ware, of course, is like, in terms of what's left in terms of NASCAR Cup owners that actually have charters, he's probably the lowest of the low. So, but ironically, JJ Haley's actually not running that bad this year. He's had a bunch of top 20 finishes. So Rick Ware seems to be at Rick Ware Racing. I guess they have a connection. I'm not sure. They have some stuff with SHR. I don't know if they do some stuff with RFK or they've improved their, in-house program, but credit to JJ Haley. Only if he could have done it in the 11 car back in 2005 and the 18 car for the 2 years he had the 18 car. Maybe his career would have been a little different. Maybe we wouldn't know about old Dennis Hamlin, or Kyle Busch wouldn't have had a soft landing like he had theoretically with RCR. Justin Haley, Ryan Blaney, who started second, was one of the dominant figures in the race. Finished first in stage 1, second in stage 2. Richard finished 10th. There were 18 lead changes amongst 12 drivers. Sorry, 18 lead changes amongst 12 drivers. Larson led, got wrecked. Austin Hill had a wreck. Chastain, Gibbs, Gagson, Cold Custard making his first Cup start of the year in a 51. Corey LaJoie was involved in the wreck. Kevin Harvick. But the most laps were led by Eric Almirola, who actually qualified on pole. Second most laps led were by Christopher Buescher. And then Blaney, Keselowski, Blaney and Byron, and then Keselowski. But in the end, Byron led, the last 18 laps of the race, made that pass on AJ Allmendinger. It looked like a day where Ford had a pretty good shot of winning. Keselowski actually went to pit late in the race and put tires on, had to come through the pack, ran out of time. Will Byron, AJ Allmendinger, some of them other guys stayed out, and that was the right strategy. Rudy Fugle making that call, and the career season for Will Byron continues. Josh, 4th win of the year. In terms of playoff points, I think he's the overall, he's definitely the overall points leader by 21 points over Martin Truex Jr. He's got a 5-point playoff point lead on Kyle Busch. He's won more stages than anybody this year and 7 more wins than anybody. If he can get that 15 playoff point bonus, it could be a saving grace for him to get through at least the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. But Will Byron comes through again and had to have a couple of rough 2-3 years or whatever, and he's slowly but surely figuring this thing out. And with Rudy Fugle, who was his crew chief in the trucks a few years ago, seems like they have a potent combination going on there, Josh.
Yeah, they definitely have a potent combination there. And William Byron, of course, a couple of years ago, wasn't really anything, and we thought he was just an okay average driver, but now seemingly has come out of whatever funk he was in the first 2 or 3 years in Cup, and has become a respectable driver over the last 2 seasons now. And once again, Denny Hamlin's being proved right, as he said at the beginning of the year, with how his with his prediction on William Byron's season, and William Byron leading the series now in wins. Although for some reason I personally don't feel like he's actually dominating like Jeff Gordon and even Kyle Larson from 2 years ago. But he's just happened to collect the most amount of wins, and of course this next gen racing has been very volatile, and even though it's not as volatile as last year, there's still there's a lot of variance in who actually runs up front on a week-to-week basis. So definitely very dominating performance, well, for contextually speaking, for William Byron. But I think the other part of this is the racing that we saw on Sunday night. A lot of the announcers on the booth were raving, Dale Jr. raving about the race, but I'm not sure if it's really true or not. I guess you can kind of say it's starting to look like kind of like an old super speedway race, like mid 90s Daytona in a way, or even, go back further, sort of to the 80s if you want in a way. But there's handling starting to come into play. I mean, tires did kind of matter. I mean, Keselowski kind of made his way up towards front after he made his final pit stop, but he ran out of time to be able to get up front. And there's still, a lot of momentum that you need to really be able to make any moves. You really need a lot of drafting help. And that's why as soon as William Byron took the lead there at the end of the race, I knew it was going to be over, because it just didn't look like the cars that he had to get by to get to the lead, it didn't look like to me that they were very strong in terms of being able to get back around him. Allmendinger didn't really look like he had a ton of pace there. Michael McDowell had damage and was kind of slow because of that. And then Daniel Suarez, I think, was also trying to go for the lead there at the end. So I think it's tough for him to stay in line and help when he's trying to take advantage of securing a spot there in the playoffs. So yeah, the racing itself was okay, but I mean, it's still this new Atlanta Super Speedway package, which not really too in favor of, although it's starting to look a little bit different there. So maybe in a few years we'll while it still be a flat out track, but maybe in a few years it'll get spread out, and maybe there'll be a little bit more interesting moves happen there. But the performance there by Byron, yeah, I mean, taking advantage of the pit stop and everybody who pitted on the final caution, and then being up front when it started raining after the final caution. So a lot of fortune there for William Byron there. And then of course he was in the pits earlier in the race and lost the lap, so he was able to get back there. So they've had a lot of good fortune to start off this year. Now they're looking like the top team here in the Cup Series to so far in the summer. So the rest of the field, I mean, Allmendinger had a shot, but like I said, he couldn't stay up front. And of course, our algorithm pick there, and Daniel Suarez almost made it up there to the front, but it just didn't look like it was enough time for him to get up front, and he needed a little bit more organization there back there. So I mean, this race was, definitely interesting, and I mean, a lot of people say it's exciting, but I kind of disagree. And then, of course, the rain happened, and then NASCAR, gets put in this awkward position of, do we stop the race and call it? Do we continue on? Do we wait until it gets really bad? And of course, now they're very much erring on the side of caution, which I guess is best for the drivers. But also on the other hand, like you have to consider how bad the weather really is. So a lot of fans upset about that. But I think at the end of the day, I think they probably made the right decision in calling the race short. But yeah, unfortunate deal there. So I mean, exciting racing throughout it, but in the end, another repeat winner.
Yeah, and it's not like, I mean, it's true what you said about Byron. It's not like I saw one meme on the socials where they showed a FedEx truck backing into the garage, and that's basically what Will Byron seems to do, backing into wins. And it's like, well, you win the race. Doesn't really matter how you win the race. They don't. I mean, it isn't style. We don't have figure skating or gymnastics scoring here. You don't have to like it. I mean, obviously he's a typical Hendrick bum who has the personality of a chalkboard. But and the school that he goes to is disgusting as well. I mean, I guess that's where Northwestern seems to get that crap from. But he wins. Chevrolet has definitely been on a upswing this year. You have all these top guys are Chevy drivers, so let's see if the guy can actually keep it together and run it through in a championship format. I mean, granted, he did win an Xfinity title for junior, but we'll see what he can do. Get into the points briefly. I mean, I got into the regular points there, but we'll get into the playoff standings. So still only 11. There's still 11 winners through 19 of the 26 races, Byron has that 21-point lead on Martin Truex Jr. It's actually pretty close battle there between Busch and Bell and Truex for second in points. I forget if they give out bonuses outside of the I think they give the top 3 or something like that. But I mean, Chastain's out. He's a little bit behind that, but he's starting to turn it around. Harvick is the leading driver without a win, plus 126 to the cut. Chris Buescher plus 102, Brad Keselowski plus 100. Then it gets interesting. Daniel Suarez and Michael McDowell are in by 3. Bubba Wallace is out by 3 points. AJ Allmendinger's minus 13. Keebler Gibbs minus 26. And Gumby Cindric minus 38 in 20th. So that's those are the guys that I think those are the ones that are actually, and Haley is another further 3 points back. Bowman, those are the guys that are, I guess, in the points situation. Bowman is 44 points behind in 22nd. So Clyde is right behind him, so there's that's the situation right now for the points. You got New Hampshire coming up this weekend. You have some different racetracks coming up, possible opportunities. We'll see what happens with that as we move forward. Xfinity Series, as I mentioned, Alsco Uniforms 250 at Atlanta Motor Speedway. John Hunter Nemechek takes his third win of 2023. Only led 3 laps. Cole Custer was the dominant driver, or Haley actually was the dominant driver, led 80 of the 100, what ended up being 169 laps of the race. Josh Berry led the second most laps. Then you had Sheldon Creed and Sieg. Those Creed and Sieg both got wrecked. So, I mean, you see some of the regular guys. Berry got stage points, but didn't get a great finish. Chandler Smith qualified on pole, led early, but fell back. Austin Hill cried wolf because nobody wanted to work with him. Well, newsflash. I mean, and even Parker Kligerman effed that up and apologized later. He's like, yeah, well, that's probably why you're an Xfinity driver and why you work on TV when you're not working with your corporate teammate. But granted, it's better off because we don't need to see Austin Hill win every freaking super speedway type drafting race. John Hunter Nemechek, Daniel Hemric, Cole Custer, Justin Haley, Sam Mayer, top 5, Keebler Gibbs, Kyle Sieg with a top 10. Wow. Parker Kligerman, Josh Williams, after parking it in March, gets a top 10 this time, and Sammy Smith rounds out the top 10. The aforementioned Hill was 12th. Clemens started in the top 10, finished 15th. Justin Allgaier, 17th. Josh Berry, 19th. And Chandler Smith, 20th. I mentioned Creed and Herbst, or Riley Herbst was there. He was involved in that same wreck with Sieg. So that was that. I mean, the one thing you could take away, yes, John Hunter Nemechek, I guess, benefited from infighting between Kaulig Racing. They seemed to have a handle on the race, but it started to get away from them. And then Justin Haley allegedly had issues with fuel because they hadn't pitted for a while. But if your car was cutting in and out, then how the hell were you able to stay side by side with Daniel Hemric for as long as you did instead of pushing him? When you're a Cup driver, Daniel Hemric struggled for basically his entire time with Kaulig Racing. The job and the determination was we need to push him into the playoffs. So I don't know where that disconnect happened for Justin Haley, but I mean, he doesn't have any problems with job security anyway. Daniel Hemric was not pleased with that result. They basically gave the race away and handed it to John Hunter Nemechek, which the guy doesn't need charity to go and win races. The MFer can win races on his own. But yeah, I mean, John Hunter wasn't the dominant figure by any means, but he backing into a victory. Well, that's a second example of somebody backing into a victory there, Josh.
I mean, he's definitely backed into a lot of victories, here. But, for John Hunter, I mean, it feels like a rare win for him because he's not typically a super speedway guy. But now has a super speedway win at Atlanta. And he's been somebody that's been dominant throughout the year in Xfinity, so it's not that surprising that he won. But yeah, you talked about the infighting between Kaulig teammates, and in the past we've seen Kaulig teammates work together. That's always been their kind of MO at the super speedways, where they've always kind of ran up front and figure out a way to stay together and then, until the last lap, and then maybe anything goes after that. But they've definitely been the team that has worked together the most and executed the plan the best, and it's been the Xfinity field versus the Kaulig cars. But it looked like that until the end, when Austin Hill spun out to cause the last caution there to go into overtime, and Chandler Smith, Justin Haley were leading, but then of course somehow Haley doesn't have fuel issues, but then like you said, fighting with Hemric, they're going side by side, kind of ruining both their chances for the win. So yeah, not sure what the deal is there. On one hand, you have a guy like Hemric, who outside of his one win that won him the championship has not really had anything in the Xfinity Series, and then you also have Haley, who has a couple of wins here and there in the Xfinity Series, and now full-time Cup driver, now trying to just go for a win for himself for fun, no points, no risk. So maybe he just wants to win for himself, and I don't know, maybe really feels like one got away from him last weekend at Chicago with Shane Van Gisbergen overtaking him for the win there, but now has an opportunity for a win here, and maybe he was trying to get that one back. I don't know, but of course they're not really working together like Kaulig teammates have been known to do. So that's a disconnect there, and a little bit in infighting there. So not always a perfect execution there by the Kaulig teams. Then you talk about Austin Hill complaining about it because no one wanted to work with him. I mean, it's kind of the opposite of the old days when everybody wanted to work with Dale Jr. because they knew he could get up to the front in a super speedway race. Well, now I guess the best super speedway racer in Xfinity now gets hung out to dry at the end, or people refuse to work with him because they know if he gets up front, well, he's probably going to win the race. So now he has not a win there this year on the Xfinity super speedway there at Atlanta. So yeah, I mean, race was definitely a handful of laps led by Justin Haley, Josh Berry leading as well. So Berry finally getting some super speedway experience up front there at the end of the race, but unfortunately did not go out and win the race or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, this race definitely interesting, but yeah, at the end of the day, another repeat winner there with John H. Nemechek, as Racing Reference has the name listed there, winning the race.
Yeah, John H. Nemechek. That's his. Well, they'll come up with pseudo names. I mean, they were thinking they were gonna name him Hunter, and of course, the loss of Joe Nemechek's younger brother John around the time when Joe Nemechek and his wife at that time were expecting their first child, hence became John Hunter Nemechek. He leads the points overall. We'll get into the driver points there. Playoff points are 1 point difference based on one more stage win. 16-point gap between Nemechek and Austin Hill. Cole Custer is minus 45. Allgaier is minus 54. That's essentially for the regular season title. After that, you're basically SOL. The top five have all won. Josh Berry, the leading driver without a win. Then Sam Mayer, Daniel Hemric's 8th in points. Sammy Smith has won, of course, this year. Sheldon Creed, Riley Herbst, Parker Kligerman round out the top 12 overall in points, but Kligerman is 6 points out of the cutoff due to Jeb Burton having a win. Kligerman 6 points off of Riley Herbst, and then after that, it's a huge gap for Moffitt, Bruckshot Jones, and Ryan Sieg. That would be something if Bruckshot Jones somehow or another misses the playoffs in the 9 car, albeit Junior Motorsports is not running anywhere near as well as they have in recent years, but Bruckshot Jones jumping in the 9 car, which has had a championship history over the years, and then first year with, I guess, major changes and the team bottoms out. But then it's Bruckshot Jones, so it's not really shocking. Truck Series, O'Reilly Auto Parts 150 at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course a week after the IndyCars. It was an interesting race for sure. get into the point standings here as well. Corey Heim was fast all weekend, qualified on pole, led the most laps, and takes the victory. Led 30 laps there. Ben Rhodes led 19. Ty Majeski led 17. So the ThorSport team, they won both stages. 36 laps led between those two guys, but neither of them end up with the trophy. Matt Crafton was, so all three guys, 5th, 6th, and 7th, the ThorSport guys all led laps. Those are the only other drivers to lead laps. Not a whole hell of a lot of movement in regards to people scoring points or scoring stage points. 10 cautions for 23 laps in a race that was 67 laps. So that's pretty terrible. But Corey Heim ended up winning. Zane Smith, Christian Eckes, Stuart Friesen from tailback to 4th. Ben Rhodes 5th, Crafton, Majeski, DiBurrito, Sanchez, and Tyler Ankrum, who won the ARCA race, and in large part due to the nonsense between Higurani and Dean Thompson, finished 10th. Marco Andretti made his NASCAR debut, finished 19th, just behind Connor Daly, running for Nice Motorsports. Landon Lewis, junior, a development driver who's working with Ron Hornaday Jr., making his truck debut, finished 24th. Rio Raja had issues and fell back, finished 29th. Some of these other people. Dale Quarterly, the ageless wonder, finished top 5 in the ARCA race, had overheating issues in the G2G shitbox. Corey Heim is establishing himself as probably one of Toyota's lead dogs for sure. He proved that last year with Kyle Busch Motorsports in limited races, but I gotta say this year with a brand new organization and their new setup with Toyota being a factory team, Corey Heim has went above and beyond. I mean, he is outperforming the Grays pretty darn easily, and then the one truck is just basically they cycle all kinds of drivers in there. So I mean, Corey Heim, it may not be a reach to say he is the favorite right now to win this Truck Series championship. Granted, Zane Smith and Eckes are probably two of the other guys you could list in that. We're right there behind him, but they weren't really a factor. If Corey Heim, if it comes down to having to win, I think that 11 truck is the most likely out of those three to pull off a win as of now. But what say you, Josh, in regards to the Truck Series debacle at Mid-Ohio?
Well, we do have to remember that Corey Heim was actually a Tate Fogelman algorithm pick. So it was, let's not give it enough. We can give it credit, but it's not like, its namesake, how shocking it happened.
Yeah.
So, but it happened. So it technically was right. So we got one there.
So now, I don't know if we have to make it the Fogelman-Heim algorithm. I think that might...
that makes it less cool. I think it just...
it just has to be the Tate Fogelman algorithm.
Yeah,
I agree with that one. I don't want to change it.
No.
Because it was just way cooler with it happening at Talladega and just, Yeah,
so... But still, it's there. We have it on the books as it there. But otherwise, the Truck Series, at Mid-Ohio, why are we doing this? Like, it's Truck Series drivers at a road course. It's very technical, like that at Mid-Ohio. I feel like the Truck Series is better off just having Watkins Glen as a road course race, because it's not too challenging of a road course in comparison to Mid-Ohio, and the Truck Series driving style of all the drivers, the driving style of a NASCAR stock car in general seems to match up better with Watkins Glen, with long straights and heavy braking zones and right-handers, left-handers, compared to winding road course with a lot of technical sections like Mid-Ohio. But the results showed themselves with the amount of cautions that the race had, and everything. So a little bit interested in Marco Andretti's performance, obviously driving for Respire, of course, now their new partnership there with Gamebridge and Group 1001. So he had a good start there, but ended up finishing in 19th. So wonder if he's going to have any more opportunities in the future at some of the road courses, or potentially, if they put him, maybe they figure out a deal, some last minute deal, and they get rid of Ty Dillon and go put Marco in the road races for the Cup Series there. So he's having a Xfinity start there now has a truck start in NASCAR, so now he's got to make his Cup debut at some point. So we'll see if something like that works out. So they got that there. Connor Daly, the other IndyCar guy, so 2 IndyCar guys finished back to back, kind of interesting there. So yeah, but otherwise, a lot of action happening in this race in terms of wrecks and stuff. But yeah, Corey Heim, I can kind of agree, but with what you say there, but it just depends on what day it is, and I think it was Corey Heim's day last week at Mid Ohio, but next week, and we only got 2 races before the playoffs started at Richmond, but Zane Smith, Christian Eckes, maybe it's their race next race, so we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah, and the points right now, Corey Heim, 26-point lead over Zane Smith, 51 on Ty Majeski. Ben Rhodes, 53 back in 4th. Enfinger, 61. Eckes, minus 80. Majeski, the only driver of that group that hasn't won. Hocevar in 7th has won twice. Matt Crafton is only up by 1 point on Stuart Friesen for the cutoff. Nick Sanchez is 1 point ahead of Matt Crafton. And then you have Matt DiBurrito. So from Matt DiBurrito to Stuart Friesen's 5 points. Hocevar's safe. He doesn't have to worry about it. Ben Rhodes, Majeski's not going to dump. I don't think he's going to dump 100 points. And I don't think it's really mathematically possible. I guess the most you could lose is 120 or 118 points, because if you max out on stage points and get the playoff points and all that crap, I think it's 60 is the maximum you could get in a race. I believe. I might be remembering it. I think that's right, because that's 50. He had 56 this past weekend. So there is a shot that if everything goes to hell for Ty Majeski, he might not make it. But I have think there's a higher likelihood that some of these guys that are behind him would have that happen to them before him. So I really think there's 7 locked-in drivers in the playoffs with 2 races to go. Playoff points, all these winners, very close. So then the points would be really condensed, minus whoever wins the regular season title, which right now, at this moment, looks like Corey Heim. They'll be running at Pocono next week. We'll preview that on the GSP. I'll be attending that race with family and friends, so hopefully there's good weather. And we'll definitely look at that playoff, that bubble, and everybody else. I think after Stuart Friesen, it's you need to win, and that's basically it. You have no other choice. Okay, so we'll move on from all that, get into the GSP roundup. I always say I try to go and speed it up, but it never really seems to work out. But we'll try. We had, they ran at Mosport this past weekend for WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, the IMSA series, and then you have practice, event details. Okay. Got all that. Results. What is it? False results. See the result. Session. No, that's not what I want. Of course. I love the IMSA website. It's one of the shittiest websites on planet Earth. Can't even find anything. You just wanna have a recap of what the hell happened. Can't get it. Have to go through all this stuff to get to that. Unofficial. Okay, there you go. Oreo writes for them. Yeah. So Tom Blomqvist and Colin Braun get their first win, or first official win, because essentially they got so penalized with the tire pressure deal they had going on at the Rolex 24. They got buried with that. So they get their first sprint win of the season, and they're followed by their Acura teammates, the Konica Minolta Acura, Wayne Taylor Racing, Andretti Autosport car of Ricky Taylor and Philippe Albuquerque. BMW number 25 coming off of their win at Watkins Glen, albeit after the race ended, with Connor DeFilippi and Nick Yellowly round out the podium. There was 8 of the 9 cars in GTP were running. They all finished on a lead lap, all within a minute or within 54 seconds. Rockenfeller, Vanderhelm with JDC Miller finished 4th. The 2 factory Porsches behind them, Tandy and Jaminet, Campbell and Nazar. Durrani and Sims finished 7th. Philip Eng and Augusto Farfus in the second BMW 8th. The Bourdais and Reger Van de Zande car did not finish the race there. Gar Robinson, Felipe Fraga take the victory in LMP3 over Below and Grist for JR3 Racing. That's the Riley 74 for Gar Robinson. Mantella and Boyd for AWA finished 3rd. GT Pro, the Corvette racing team, and the Chevy Grand Prix conveniently wins GT Pro on same weekend that which we'll mention here in a little more detail. The Corvette racing team won the GTM championship in the WEC. Klaus Bachler, Patrick Pilet for Pfaff Motorsports in a home game finishes 2nd. 3rd was Junkadel and Gunan in the WeatherTech Racing Mercedes. The GTD winner, Brian Sellers, Madison Snow for Paul Miller Racing. Brandon Uribe and Shandorf for Inception Racing. In their McLaren, BMW McLaren, and then Mike Skeen and Grenier, Korthoff Motorsports Mercedes, the 3rd place finisher in GTD. The next race for IMSA will be at Lime Rock Park next week. We'll preview that. Event details. Curious what it's going to actually say because they don't have all that. They still haven't. So it's a GT only event, GTD Pro and GTD. Then you're going to have the Michelin Pilot Challenge, which is only showing TCR, but I think they're probably going to have more classes in that, but we'll see. F2 and F3 were at Silverstone this past weekend. We'll start with Formula 2 and the results at the British Grand Prix. Frederick Vesti won the sprint race, and Victor Martins won the feature. In the sprint race, Frederick Vesti over Teo Pocher. Jack Doohan was rounded out the podium. Enzo Fittipaldi and Isaac Hadjar rounded out the top 5. Deruvalo was 11th, Kushmaini 13th, Jack Crawford 14th. Juan Manuel Correa was 19th, and Iwasa finished last, so brutal for him. In the sprint race, in the feature race, Victor Martins over Zane Maloney, Teo Pocher, Jack Doohan. Iwasa ends up coming back to finish 5th. Deruvalo got a 6th place finish. Enzo Fittipaldi, Bierman, Leclerc, Jack Crawford rounds out the top 10, gets a point there. Correa 11th, that's good to see. Brad Benavides was 13th, and so that is that. The standings going into Hungary next week, Frederick Vesti has a 6-point lead on Teo Pocher. Iwasa is 24 points back in 3rd. Then the Bierman and Martins are tied in 4th with 88 points, and from there you kind of go on. Crawford is 10 points out of 11th, 21 points out of 10th. And look at some of these other people. Nissani, Cordial, and Benavides are the only drivers so far this year that haven't scored a point. Not really shocking. In Formula 3, they were at also at Silverstone with Franco Colapinto, the winner of the sprint, and Oliver Goth, the feature race winner. Certain people I know had issues with that name, so I'll take the advice and make sure I pronounce it right. Colapinto over Gabriel Bertoletto and Christian Mansell. Caio Collet, Gabriel Mini, some guy named Barter, Bornioli Fornaroli, Sebastian Montoya, Ito Cohen, and Pepe Marti rounds out the top 10. Trying to go through here some of these other people. Kalen Frederick was 22nd. Trying to find the brown guy, but all right. No, that's not what I wanted to do. The feature race results: Goth, Fornaroli, Marti, the top 3. It sounds like Marti will join that great Red Bull driver development program. Paul Aaron, Mansell, top 5. Bortoletto, Mini, Colapinto, Saucy, Sebastian Montoya rounds out the top 10. Trying to go through here. Frederick, another great result for him. Standings as they head off to Budapest. Bortoletto is 36 points ahead of Pepe Marti. And then after that, it's a really close battle from 3rd to 8th is separated by 15 points. A lot can go on there. Then the battle, Goth gets himself into the 10th place in points. Literally, that's the first time he's scored points. That victory, first time he's scored points since the opening rounds at Sakir. He has not scored points since until he won that round, the feature race at Silverstone. So that's pretty fucking pathetic. Bogdanovic had a rough weekend. So did Zach O'Sullivan. Neither scored points in either race. They'll try to recover. Only 6 total races to go in the series after the back-to-back races at Budapest and Spa. Their last weekend will be at Monza. So interesting time ahead here for the F2 and F3 drivers, trying to make sure that they put themselves in place to possibly get an F2 for next year. Supercars were at Townsville for race there. Flip script after 2022 SVG Clash. Okay, so we'll go to that. The Sydney Super Night will run the next time. The race results from Townsville. In race 16, the winner was Will Brown. And in race 17, Anton Di Pasquale, in what has been a horrendous season for Ford and for the Dick Johnson Racing team, Anton Di Pasquale goes and gets that victory, gives Ford only their second win of the year. The rest of the rounds have been won by Chevrolet and mostly the Red Bull and Red Bull AAA team and Coca-Cola Erebus team, who has 13 wins amongst all 4 of their drivers. The championship points, next race 2 weeks from now, Will Brown is 7 points of his teammate Brody Kostecki. Brock Feeney is minus 26, the Red Bull driver, and Shane Van Gisbergen is 4th, 72 points behind. So interesting with those 4. Best of the rest, Chaz Moster, 243 points out of the lead. Best Ford as well. One of, 3 Fords that are in the top 10. Fords are definitely struggling this year, but hey, we see that in NASCAR too, so I guess it ain't a shock anymore. Extreme Island X Prix saw a Rosberg team go and win both the races at the Island X Prix. So whatever. Extreme H. Okay. Island X Prix. The next race maybe in September, but they don't have anything announced as of yet. In the results, though, let's go back in round 5 because they run back-to-back days. The QF standings, that's qualifying, redemption, that's whatever. So the winners, Rosberg, Kotolinski, Christofferson over the Aconia Science team are Layla Sands and Matthias Ekstrom. The Hummer EV Ganassi team with Amanda Sorensen and RJ Anderson finished 3rd. Apt Cupro with Clara Anderson and Sebastian Loeb filling in there finished 4th, and the Andretti team with Katie Munnings and Timmy Hansen finished 5th, DNF'd in that race. And the race 6, Rosberg X Racing gets another victory, and then grand final was Rosberg over Sainz first, and then Andretti. The Ganassi team was fourth. Heda, Hosas, Andreas Backrud for JBXC, so Jensen Button's team, finished fifth. Somewhat competitive, everybody within 13 seconds there in the grand final there. The championship standings heading into the next race, whenever that'll be. The Konya Sainz team is 4 points ahead of Rosberg. The what is it? Is that the Veloce team is 14 points out in third. The Ganassi team is fourth, and X44 is fifth, only 4 points ahead of the Andretti team. We'll forget about Extreme E for a while. The WEC ran at Monza, and interesting, I mentioned about Corvette Racing locking up their championship. Good God Almighty. 6 hours of Monza. The results, Toyota with Mike Conway, Kamui Kobayashi, and Jose Maria Lopez win by 16.52 seconds over the Ferrari number 50 of Antonio Fuoco, Miguel Molina, and Nicholas Nielsen. The Peugeot number 93 with Paul di Resta, Mikkel Jensen, and John-Eric Verne finished third. And then you had the hypercar class out of that. The next was 5 cars were a lap down. Then the top 10 still rounded out, all 10 within 2 laps in the hypercar category. And then, so I mentioned those guys. Then in LMP2, David Heinemeier Hansen, Pietro Fittipaldi, and Oliver Rasmussen for Jota Sport won by a lap over the Alpine team by over Vaxvier, Julian Cannell, and Milesi. Team WRT with Rui Andrade, Robert Kubica, and Louis Delatraz finished third. The United Autosport team run partly by Zach Brown, Josh Pearson, the American, Guido van der Garde, and Olivier Jarvis just outside of the podium. So 10 of the 12 prototypes, there's issues, of course, with the Van Wall car, because it wouldn't be a day without the Van Wall car having issues. And Proton competition, Gian Maria Bruni, Harry Tinknell, and Neil Yanni had issues. They were running up front, led a couple laps in their debut with the WeatherTech Porsche 963, but weren't able to finish the race. In GTM, Dempsey Proton Racing, Christian Reed, Peterson, Julian Andlauer were the winner over the Iron Lynx team of Schiavone, Cressoni, and Piccarello. And then GR Racing with Wainwright, Pera, and Barker were third. The Corvette with Ben Keating, Nicholas Verone, and Nicky Katzberg and Verone finished fourth, but that was enough to lock up the championship in GTM. So we go classification. That's, I guess, okay. Yeah, season results. Yeah, so right now the points for the LMP or GTE Teams Championship, it's over. Corvettes won that. The Iron Dames are in second, only 2 points out of the ORT by TF. Aston Dempsey Proton moves up to fourth. That's a close battle. It's going to go on all the way to the end. The drivers, as I mentioned, Nicky Katzberg, Nicholas Verone, they've locked up the GTM Drivers Trophy as well. In the trophies for LMP2, WRT is 10 points out of Inter Europol. That's really where the battle lies. In drivers, that's the same gap, of course. The Inter Europol team won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The FIA World Cup, Hertz Team Jota has, a couple of races. They were ahead, or they ran a few more races. So they have a decent lead there, essentially the customer trophy. In Manufacturers Championship, 26 points separates Toyota and Ferrari. And then in the Drivers Championship, Hartley, Rio Hirakawa, Sebastian Buemi team lead their teammates Jose Maria Lopez, Kamui Kobayashi, and Mike Conway by 23 points. That the second Toyota, the number is, that number 7 is tied with the Ferrari team of Perguidi, Giovinazzi, and Collado. So that's a Drivers' Championship there. F1 Academy also ran at Monza. Marta Garcia ran race 1. Lena Buller was the race 2 winner, and Bianca Bustamante won race 3. The standings in that category with 6 total races to go, but there will be a huge break after the end of July at Paul Ricard. Marta Garcia, after a relatively quiet weekend at Zandvoort, aided by Hamna Al-Kabasi's struggles, has now stretched the points lead back to 36 points. Buller is 7 points behind Al-Kabasi for second. Abby pulling Niera Marti and Bianca Bustamante, they're all separated by 19 points. And so they'll be back at Les Castellets, a.k.a. Paul Ricard. Josh, I'll bring you back in since it's the SRX, and we know a lot of these guys from our NASCAR fandom. They'll be racing their schedule this year. They'll start at Stafford Motor Speedway in Connecticut, then Thunder Road Speed Bowl in Vermont. Of course, connected to the late great Ken Squire. Motor Mile Speedway in Virginia, Berlin Raceway in Michigan, Eldora Speedway in Ohio, and Lucas Oil Speedway in Missouri. So 2 dirt races to end their season. The 2023 drivers is a big list. I'm trying to figure, it would be nice to know who is racing where. Trying to get the schedule, schedule, take a sale. So SRX driver. Yeah, so drivers 2023.
It's top heavy in NASCAR.
Yeah, a lot of NASCAR drivers. Marco Andretti comes back as a defending series champion. And go through, I'm trying to go through, I guess. So the full-time drivers, so these are full-time: Haley Deegan, Ryan Hunter-Ray, Brad Keselowski, Bobby Labonte, who did a hit from his camper with his wife doing the video work, Nonek, Ryan Newman, Kenny Schrader, Tony Stewart, the, of course, part owner of the series and the original champion of the series, and Paul Tracy to go and keep all the people who work on the cars busy. So that's, 1, 2, 3, 8, 9. Part-time drivers will, Stafford, part-time drivers is a deep list. Staff, so Clint Boyer will be running this weekend. Kevin Harvick's also running, and he's worried about the fact that Motor Mile Speedway, I don't know why they call it Pulaski, subsequently, that he'll fall out of the seat because he's out of shape. Pretty sure he will. And Dennis Hamlin. So those are the 3 guys there'll be 4 actually. Antoine Kanaan is also going to show up at Stafford. So they'll have 13 cars on the grid for Thursday Night Thunder. And we'll see what happens with that. Series has been pretty good. I'm curious to see what Kenny Schrader can do running the full season. I'm also curious what Brad Keselowski and Ryan Hunter-Ray in his second year in the series, what they can do as well. Can Marco Andretti respond and win back-to-back championships? That would be something. But we'll see about that. In Formula E, we'll go into the points and just get that going. Formula E, ABB Formula E World Championship, 15 or 2 races, and then so they'll run 2 races, and then in 2 weeks. After 2 weeks' time, they'll run in London for the last 2 races of the season. So the season is coming to a close quickly. They'll start their 2024 season in January. So that'll be in Mexico City, and then Diriyah and Saudi. They have a couple races to announce. Sao Paulo, Tokyo, Rome will get moved to April. Then Monaco, the 2 races in Berlin, another TBD. Indonesia will be moved into June, along with Portland, and then they'll have a gap to the London doubleheader finale. The standings heading into this weekend's doubleheader in Rome, Jake Dennis leads Nick Cassidy by 1 point. So those are both customer teams. Jake Dennis with the Avalanche Andretti team. They're a Porsche. They get the Porsche power unit. Then you have the Nick Cassidy with Envision Racing. They get Jaguar power units. Pascal Wehrlein driving for Porsche's 3rd. Mitch Evans for Jaguar's 4th. Jean-Eric Verne 5th for DS. Penske, Antonio Felix da Costa in 6th. Those are really, that's about as far as I think you can go. Because right now, Dennis has a 61. 61 point lead on Antonio Felix da Costa. 4 races to go. We'll see how that all works out. But Porsche the Porsche team is leading the constructors or teams championship over Envision by 6 points, and that's really the battle there. So we'll see what happens with that, and we'll recap it on next week's show. Last but not least, World Superbikes. World Superbikes will be racing at Imola. And something, okay, that's going to be interesting to read. Results. As I mentioned, Alvaro Bautista has dominated yet again this year. Nearly 100-point lead on Toprak Raskat-Lioku, who has announced earlier this season that he will be moving to BMW. The highest placed BMW at the moment is 13th, and that's a factory rider over a customer rider, which is Garrett Gerloff, the American. They're 13th and 14th, so we'll see how that all works out. Andrea Locatelli 3rd, Johnny Ray 4th, Axel Bassani 5th. Alrighty then. So let's get into IndyCar. Toronto Classic, long time race for the IndyCar Series, getting into the meat of their schedule. Very rough, twisting course. They will then run a doubleheader at Iowa next week. So a busy time for the IndyCar Series. Toronto has seen you have the mix of like the carnage, but you have great performances. We got the Honda Indy Toronto. It'll be on Peacock only. So for those who are looking for it on regular TV, well, it ain't going to be on regular TV. Scott Dixon, the latest winner last year, go and get into average finish and all. Felix Rosenquist has only run there twice, but has finished in the top 5 both times. And Colton Herta 2 times there, 1 top 5, 2 top 10s for him. Alex Palou ran there last year, had a bad starting position, but ended up finishing 6th. Scott Dixon, 4 wins at Toronto, 8 top 5s and 12 top 10s in 14 starts with 2 poles. Have led 240 laps there. Average finish of 6.8, one of his better places where he qualifies. So something to look at. Christian Lundgaard finished 8th last year. Pagenaud's not even racing, so that's unfortunate. One of his better circuits he's won there before. Scotty McLaughlin, 9th last year. Marco Andretti was actually good at Toronto, surprisingly. Elio Castro-Neves, 4 top 5, 7 top 10s in 12 starts there. Outside of those guys, Newgarden and Power both won there twice. And that rounds out the guys that have, and their stats in terms of who has done what at Toronto. Points, as we mentioned a couple weeks ago, Alex Palou has a 110-point lead on Scott Dixon, 115 on Newgarden, and then was a 122 on Marcus Ericsson, 127 on Pato O'Ward. So right now is the time. It's a track where if they wanted to take advantage of maybe get Alex Palou to make a mistake and lose some points, this is an opportunity, this stretch here next couple of weeks, to go and make that happen, with Iowa coming up as well with a doubleheader. I don't know. Did you go first, Josh, last week, or did I? I don't even remember. I have to go look in the picks. I went first. Okay, so I went first. So you can go first with the Indy cars. Let us know who you think will be the winner and who your wild card is for Toronto, Josh.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's hard to go against the series leader in Alex Palou, so I'm going to go with him as my race winner. Yeah, 4 in a row for Palou. Kind of rhymes there. But, yeah, I mean, he's just been the guy this year, and I can't really see why he wouldn't win this race. Been on a hot streak 4 in a row. And he continues to dominate the series, and I think eventually will lead to another series title for him. So you got that, and then wild card. I mean, it's tough because there's a lot of good guys here that can race this track, and even guys that aren't currently racing or haven't been good this season could be good here, but we'll have to. Let me see. I'm looking at the standings here to get a better scope. Well,
you have 27 guys that have at this point had run every race, but now Connor Daly, or no, he missed one, but sorry, so that's not 27, but 25 have run every race because Simon Pagenaud's not going to run this weekend as well. So I guess that could amend the options for the wild card to, what is it? If it's 25, we could get into the top 13 is out.
Yeah.
So you can go from 14th on.
Yeah, I want to go with Callum Ilott and a wild card. He's been pretty impressive so far this year, and I mean he's 16th in the standings, but he had a good run at St. Petersburg back at the beginning of the year. Another chaotic event that we had back at the beginning of the year on the street course, and didn't do so well at Long Beach, but Exhibition Place, a very chaotic racetrack, and I think he definitely could be a guy that could come out of here with a good finish. So yeah, we'll go with him as a wild card for this weekend.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go with Scott Dixon. The stats, it's very hard to go against history, even though in some cases it may not matter right now, but Scott Dixon's been on a little bit of a run recently, and he needs to win. So why not win at a place you've won 4 times in the PNC Bank Honda? And my wild card is David Malukas, mainly because of the momentum from the Mid-Ohio result. 12th place finish last year. So if he can continue that momentum, you never know. In terms of a kind of sneaky pick, I don't think there really is one, but interested to see what Tom Blomqvist can do. Di Francesco's the only Canadian. So that means there won't be any Canadians on the grid next year, probably. So there is that. We'll go over that next week on the. Oh, that's a good picture of her. On the GSP. The Cup and XFinity series will be at New Hampshire Motor Speedway for first the XFinity and Better Health 200. Only one car as of now would miss the show, 39 for 38 spots. It doesn't show anybody has withdrawn. Trying to go through here. Any differences? Weatherman, I think, has been in the 4 for a while now. Or Smithly or whatever. Like they guess they changed that one. Brennan Poole Stephen Parsons back in the 07. Mason Massey back in the 08 for SS Greenlight. The Kaulig number 10 still has TBA. Joe Graff Jr. is in the 19. Oh, great. Connor Mozak again in 24. 35 is also to be announced. Chris Hacker in the 38 for RSS. Ryan Ellis back in the 43. Roger Caruth back in the 44. Greg Van Alst getting another opportunity in the 45 after a brutal first start at Atlanta. CJ McLaughlin and the caution that'll be coming with him will be driving for Emerling Gase, but then he wrecked a couple of weeks ago and got parked essentially. Chad Fincham is entered with Carl Long's MBM team. Dawson Cram, former guest on the show for CHK in the 74. Alex LeBay back in the 91. And Kyle Segan 28. So I'll go first on this one. Not a lot really to work with here in terms of drivers. I mean, it's a flat track, not a lot of things to take from earlier other than Phoenix and I guess Richmond. So to me, flat tracks really suit the Gibbs cars. So I'm going to go with John Hunter to win. And in terms of a wild card selection, I'm going to go with wild card selection. Darn. This is actually hard here. I don't have to go back into the points actually. That would actually tell me who I could choose. 19. Okay. So wild card. I'll go with Bruckshot Jones. The guy is a flat track. He's won a lot of races at Phoenix, or not a lot, but he's won at Phoenix. He knows flat tracks. He needs some sort of miracle to make the playoffs. So why not at New Hampshire do fuel strategy, do something different, and try to win that race? What say you, Josh, in terms of the Xfinity Series?
I'm gonna go with Chandler Smith as my pick, who did win his first race this year on a flat track, and he had done well at Phoenix in the Xfinity Series, finishing 5th there on a flat track and led a couple laps there. So I'll go with him this weekend in New Hampshire. I mean, I'm gonna have to pull up the standings as well as far as who a wild card could be. I'll go with Parker Retzlaff here. I mean, this is another track where he could do well. So I mean, he's in the middle of the standings there, just around the same area as Brandon Jones. So I'll go with him this weekend. And I mean, he's a sim guy, so I'll go with him as wild card.
It's interesting. I was thinking about taking Paperboy, so it makes sense that you went with him. Sim, of course, great sim racer. That's how he got into the regular cars, and Jordan Anderson giving him an opportunity to run the full season, and accounting for himself very, very well for guys that have around guys that have a lot more experience than he does. So credit to him on that. The Cup Series Crayon 301 Sunday, 301 laps, of course, and we'll see. Yeah, so Ross Chastain on the heels of announcing a multi-year deal with Busch Light. Kind of forgot about that. That's my fault. Mean Stewart, but that's been going on for months. People have known that he was going to leave. When Kevin Harvick announced his retirement, it basically meant Busch was leaving, and they were looking at Ross, and that's been a case, and it actually is now official. So we'll see what happens with his rest of his list of sponsors he's got going on. Chastain will have Kubota on his car, Auto Trader for Cindric, Dylan Bass Pro Shops, Busch Light for Harvick, Valvoline for Larson, BuildSubmarines.com for Brad Keselowski, Schulter Systems. I can't. Yeah, it's a good one. Good tongue twister. Corey LaJoy there. Lenovo for Kyle Busch. Mavis tire and brakes for Denny Hamlin, one of the ugliest paint schemes I've ever seen. Menard Sylvania for Ryan Blaney. Mobile 1 Gen G for Chase Briscoe. Nice paint scheme, black car, so it's pretty cool. No Neck will be running for Rick Ware in the 15 again. AJ Allmendinger in the Nutrient Ag Solutions. 16 Reese's Fine Foods for Martin Truex Jr. At one of his 18 home tracks. Ream and Watts, yeah, that's usual. DraftKings on Bubba Wallace's car. Raptor back on for Byron. Campers in RV, who was on the Xfinity car for Justin Haley last week, will be on the Cup car this week. The Pete Store for McDowell. A&W Root Beer for Todd Gilliland. Mohawk Northeast, a personal sponsor for Ryan Preece. DraftKings Network on the 45 for Tyler Reddick. Drumstick, the ice cream for Stent O. Richard. Cold Custard back again this week. Ty Gibbs with his Jesus Freak sponsor. Ferris Commercial Mowers for Ty Dillon. BJ McLeod is actually going to have Circle B diecast on the car this weekend. And Daniel Suarez will have Mr. Worldwide, Mr. 305, with his Slam Foundation and the Trackhouse album on his number 99. So yeah, 36 cars, nothing out of the ordinary. New Hampshire Motor Speedway. I think Christopher Bell won this race last year, and he probably should have won 2 in a row, but Eric Almirillo won because it got too dark, and he finished second. So you can go first there, Josh. Let us know who you think is going to win and who your wild card selection would be for New Hampshire Motor Speedway this weekend.
Well, I mean, I really think Christopher Bell can come out this weekend and defend his win from last year and win this weekend's race here at New Hampshire. And not only just because he won last year, but he has a pretty good track record at this racetrack throughout his entire NASCAR career. Won once in the Truck Series, won 3 times in the Xfinity Series here at this racetrack. So New Hampshire is very much a Christopher Bell type track. Just run well throughout his entire NASCAR career at this track. So I think he will win this weekend. And my wild card pick, well, I'm going to pull the technicality there and go with Chase Elliott as the wild card. And he finished second in this race last year, so that's pretty damn good for a wild card, even though he probably shouldn't be, but we'll pull that technicality there because, I mean, this year he hasn't been as good, though, so, I mean, it does kind of fit the bill, I mean, besides the being injured part, so, yeah, we'll see how he does in his quest to try to make it into the NASCAR playoffs later on this year.
Yeah, that's we're going to be able to utilize that technicality until he wins. So whoever picks first is probably going to pick Clyde. I mean, of course, we both somehow or another, I messed up and didn't pick SVG when it was obvious. So that's my fault. But whatever. We have another algorithm win, so I guess we made up for it. So Bell and William Clyde Elliott, WCE2 wild card. Phil is going to go with that Truex kid from Mayetta, New Jersey, to win. And he won at Dover earlier this year. And why wouldn't he go and win at another one of his home racetracks? He has, over the last 10 races, he has the best average finish of 6.8, average start of 5.4, and the most points amongst active drivers. So that's, I mean, Toyotas, you see 3 of the top 5 guys, Truex, Hamlin, Bell, and then Penske guys, formerly, of course, Keselowski, then you got Logano and Blaney, and then Kevin Harvick, because it's Kevin Harvick. Let's see, in terms of a wild card selection, the technicality, of course, with Clyde, 21, 30. So yeah, fifth. So at worst case, it's like all the 16. I'm gonna go with AJ Allmendinger because now all of a sudden it looks like Kaulig has a little bit of momentum on their side on the Cup side. He ran well last week. His son went and ran well at Chicago. So I think they have the momentum Allmendinger is usually done well at the flatter racetracks compared to some of the cookie cutters. So, I mean, it definitely is wild if he can go and get that victory on an oval. And if that would be huge for them and for Kaulig Racing and in general for AJ Allmendinger. So we'll see what happens with that. Alrighty then. Josh, it's your turn to talk about all things sim racing. What's going on in the world of iRacing?
I mean, yeah, of course, iRacing, the big event coming up is the Firecracker 400, and should be interesting seeing all the different drivers there who want to race. It's always entertaining to watch that one, and we'll see which of the pros come out to race for that one. I'm sure Dale Jr. will try to come out for that one. We'll see who other drivers try to come out for that, whether Kyle Busch or any of the other sim guys, or drivers who do a lot of iRacing in general on there. So we'll see, who comes out and races in that one. So should be interesting. Should be a fun event to watch. I think this week are the prelims and everything. So should be a interesting deal there and how they're able to get the field set for that and everything. So that should be interesting. iRacing. I mean, I think. Also this week should mention if you're looking for equipment, Amazon does have Prime Day, and I think the Logitech racing wheel is on sale this week on Prime Day for Amazon. So if you're looking for something for a starter wheel or anything like that, it's definitely the Logitech, I think G920 or G29 or something like that on Amazon. So that's a good fit for anybody that's a beginner or anybody who wants to just race good quality equipment. I mean, it's not up there with Fanatec, but it's definitely a good starter wheel there that anybody can do. It has a good set of driver controls there with a lot of D-pad and button pads, kind of make it compatible with PlayStation, and I think it does have a dial to turn for driver adjustments as well and driver aids. So I think it does, for IndyCar, I think if you wanted to turn the dial for the weight jacker, that's a good usage for that button there as well. That's on sale Prime Day tomorrow and today and tomorrow at the time of this recording. So if you're looking for something in general that's there. But let's see, on the iRacing schedule this week, besides the private events, let's see if we can pull it up here. Series, upcoming races. I mean, of course, you got the Cup Series at New Hampshire, Cars Tour at Concord, Dover at the NASCAR 87 cars at Dover, ARCA Menards Series at Nashville Super Speedway. We got Dallara Dash at Michigan Speedway. The Open Wheel Series, so the Indy cars at Watkins Glen on the boot. Gen 4 at Rockingham. That's all the major series there. I'm starting to see the schedule repeat there. And then the Carburetor Cup at iRacing Super Speedway. Let me sort this for the road courses now on my schedule. Road fly. Then the Toyota GR Series at Okayama Circuit. GT3 Fanatec Challenge at Virginia International Raceway. Formula Fords at Okayama International Circuit. You got Formula V also at Okayama International Circuit, so that one's a pretty good track. Ferrari GT3s at Spa. You got Stock Car Brazil at Spa as well. Global Mazda MX-5s at Summit Point Raceway. Got US Open Wheel D, USF 2000, Suzuka, Formula IR at Imola. You've got, let's see here, trying to look, the Radical Racing Challenge at Laguna Seca, and then you've got the Clio Cup at Summit Point Raceway as well. So as always, there's a lot of challenge, on both ends on sim for oval and dirt racing and road course racing. So definitely always a fun time on there. Probably need to download F123 soon as well. I haven't got a chance to get to it, but probably might download one soon. Try to run that one a bit as well, just to have more compatibility on the console side or elsewhere. So should be able to do that. Also, update on the go-karting end as well. I talked to go back last week, mentioned my go-kart experience out in Bushnell Motorsports Park. There's a guy that kart owner there that kind of runs private events. Got a chance to hook up talk to him yesterday and had a good conversation with him. Talked about the details about his upcoming event, and yeah, it's on 23rd is the next event, July 23rd, and said he offers several classes of karts, and said for me, someone who's only done rentals, do 15 horsepower go-karts. So he has a 15 horsepower kart, and he provides the suit and everything, and they have helmets there as well. So it's, I think, like $40 per session, and he gives you includes like a couple of laps to shake it down to get comfortable. So it's like, well, maybe 10 to 12 laps, and then plus 3 as a bonus for the first one, and then plus 3 laps there, and then the rest $40 per session. I think you can get all of them there. So I think he's going to do a total of 6. So should be interesting there. Definitely interested in it. So I think I'm going to clear out my schedule for Sunday the 23rd to go out and do some go-kart racing on a pro level kart. Running at 15 horsepower. So should be an interesting one there, and definitely look forward to being able to do that. So look out for that in the next couple weeks, and definitely gonna be talking about it. I'll definitely be telling you about it. Phil probably show you or at least document that a little bit, and let you and all my other friends see that. So we'll see how that goes. Trying to think what else I have. I think that's it for me this week on Sim Segment, of course. And it's always, follow when we stream, follow on Twitch TV /UCLR2. So go and watch on there. But as always, glad to be able to discuss again this week. Rinse and repeat, of course, with all the familiar winners that we're experiencing this week. So hopefully next week we have some better winners, and we have more interesting things to talk about in terms of winners, and be a little bit more excited like we were a few weeks ago when Shane Van Gissenberg won at and I don't think I can pronounce his name right either. So like everybody. So like what happened in Chicago, that was pretty exciting. So hopefully something interesting happens this weekend, and we can have something exciting to talk about next week.
Yeah, definitely. I hope so. IndyCar and NASCAR this coming weekend, but then you'll have Formula One back at Hungary, amongst other series. So we'll definitely get into that. You can find a show, of course. Find me at APG Matthew 28. You can find the Gripster podcast on Twitter as well at Gripster Pod. Might have to go and make the other, whatever that other one, Threads thing, but we'll see about that. PhilipGMatthew.com blog site. You can find the show there. You can also find the show on YouTube, where Josh, of course, handles the video feed. And so we'll have it over there. You can find the Gripster podcast basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week for episode 178 of the Gripster podcast to talk about all things that happened this week in motorsports, and anything else that comes to mind. Rookies will start reporting to training camp for the NFL next week, whichever day we end up recording. So that'll be something to look at. So we could probably get a couple of minutes in on that as well. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Take care, and we'll see you next time on the Gripster podcast.